I should probably start being like keeping track of it so I know when 30 days is up. I'll have to go back through and count the videos. Anyhow, warranty. I thought that I was running late for some reason. I felt very like I'm late to a very important date. As I was like making breakfast and stuff, and then by the time I hopped out of the shower and got dressed, I'm like, it's not. It's like 9 o'clock, April. So I slept until 7:30, and my mind was like, oh my god, that's so late. But really, it's not. So I'm gonna make some tea. This is my morning tea. Um, I do pretty much a lot of the same thing pretty often. So I'm still working through this little pot of silver needle tea, and I am bleeding, so I don't like to push myself with a lot of caffeine or anything while I'm doing that. So I just use a pinch. Um, but I'm not really into the white tea or the green tea for the caffeine content so much as I like the L-theanine and the antioxidants and how it supports my gut microbiome and heart health, stomach health, all the things. I don't need to be hit by the caffeine. So I like white teas. They, to me, if you brew them gentle, they tend to not give out a lot of caffeine anyhow. And if you use lower water temperatures, you get more of the L-theanine and less of the caffeine. So anyhow, I am ripping up some nectarines, some white dried nectarines to add to it because I like it that way. And I want extra today. And I can do that because I'm a big girl. Okay, so I saw, yeah, last night I asked everybody like topics that they would like me to talk about. And there's a lot on there. A lot of it, they're all really good ideas. Let me just say that first. But a lot of it is like very specific. Like I'd have to do like a specific video where I'd need to be showing you how to do something, right? Which I still plan on doing those types of videos. I'm just seeing um, what my brain is doing after doing these lives for about a month. And I got a lot of really great questions on there. I'm still kind of sorting through how I'd use them or things like that. But one thing came across my comment section, and my brain is gonna use that as a topic. Now, it wasn't a question. It was somebody who said, and I don't think that they meant any ill intent or anything like that, and I'm not upset with this person if they're watching, but they said that I shouldn't go live every day because it's not fair to other creators, like other herbalists and things, I assume, who also want to be on YouTube, and I'm not making space for them. First of all, the internet is massive. Right now, there's only like 60 people watching me. I am not preventing anybody from going and watching somebody else's content, right? But that comes from this narrative that I see really, really often, super often in the herbalism world and beyond in other industries. It's not unique to it, but I see it's really prevalent where, like, people are, particularly women, I don't see this being told to male herbalists very often, are told that if they're being what somebody perceives as successful, it is somehow taking from another person who's trying. And it comes down to a scarcity mindset. So I thought I would I would take the time to talk about that today, just on a broader, big picture of like what it's been like over the last decade for me to be a practicing herbalist who has slightly done well for herself. That's and I say that with like the most humble, like from the outside people probably think that I'm not like famous, I'm not, any of that stuff. But I'm just a regular human, and it always freaks me out when people recognize me in public. I'm like, wait, what? You know who I am? And I will admit it's happening more and more often. But um, I just thought, well, let's talk about that. First of all, there is room for everybody. There is no need to feel like you have to hold yourself back. You have to be anything less than you are, that your ideas and your ambitions and your goals are somehow a bad thing because other people aren't achieving theirs necessarily, but ultimately when people feel that way about somebody, they're making a bunch of wild assumptions, right? Because like I share myself pretty openly here, but you still like aren't living my life, right? Like they're just assumptions of like how successful you think I may or may not be. And if somebody perceives that as, oh, well, I can't get my shop going well, or nobody's interested in my content because April or whoever content went really big. Um, Back in the day, well, it's not even that long ago, I used to do shop updates. You know, I used to do them every month and every other month and every 3 months because they were harder and harder to do. And it was like a Black Friday sale every time I'd open my shop. We'd crash servers. Thousands of people would come shop, and I started getting messages. I started getting messages from other herbalists telling me that like it wasn't fair, like, and it always come from like fake accounts and stuff like that, you know, because they don't really want to like approach me, but they want to say some stuff to me without any consequences, you know, being like, and so when I was like, I shouldn't have to like dim myself in any way, like if people are choosing to support me, that doesn't mean that they're choosing not to support you. The internet is a vast chasm. There are billions of people on this earth. I can't possibly be every person's herbalist or make enough to go around to the people who even want to support me, you know? And and so when I didn't respond in the way that they've wanted me to over the years, what has happened was before I had stopped doing shop updates on my own accord because I started just having consistent things. And anyhow, um, they started planning their events a day before I would have mine. And I always thought it was really funny. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story because this is just story time and just talking about being an herbalist in general. Um, Years ago, I think it was when I moved off of the mountain, and so it was like, oh, I don't know, 7 years ago at least, maybe six or so. And it's very nice. um, and we were getting ready for a shop update. At this point in time, you know, the shop was definitely still how and only how we were supporting our existence, but I wouldn't say that we had like a massive following, and it was really hard work. And um, we didn't even have the apothecary building yet. Everything was coming out of my kitchen, right? And there was an ice storm in Northeast Oregon that like shut the place down for someone try to hex me. Shut the place down for like 2 weeks. Nothing could get through. All the major highways were closed, trees were down, power was out, and so I couldn't do my shop update, right? And one of the things that people really went to heavily at that time, and still whenever I have it in stock, is my extra strength hemp oil pain salve, which is, there's some CBD in it, but mainly it's like cayenne and white willow and things that relieve pain. But anyhow, the day that I announced, that I couldn't have a shop update, another herbalist literally within an hour took a picture of salves that weren't even cool yet, announced that she had pain salve for people, right? She basically, but and I would have been like, well, that was kind of obvious, right? Because she follows me, she commented on it. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, right? And I'm like, okay, well, you know, vulture's gonna circle, right? But then, and this is where it went crazy. She started messaging my followers from the comments saying that they were really bummed that they wouldn't be able to get it, but they were happy to wait for it because they liked it so much. She started messaging people saying that she had a better salve. And that's fucking predatory, but, and I'm not just bringing this up to like dish tea, right? But, I talked about it. I didn't talk about her directly, but I talked about like the issues in the herbalism world and just handcrafting in general, where everybody like has to, they like feel like they have to step on top of everybody and like take advantage of people's like, you know, I wasn't able to do something, so they're like, I can do it, right? They're filling that role in a really fucking sketchy way, right? Um, and I was really upset about it, you know, because it, again, I don't care if she sells her own version or if anybody does their own version, but it was really fucked up to do, right? And So when I finally was able to have my shop update, like 3 weeks later, for the first time in my life, for the first time I opened up my little Etsy shop at the time, I sold out of everything in 15 minutes. And that was how my shop updates were really born. After that, it didn't matter how much I made, people knew that things would go fast and it went crazy. And so it just started building more and more animosity towards me in the herbalism world, on top of my big ass mouth. Where I was talking and continue to talk openly about the issues of knowledge being held hostage for profit, people being made to feel like they're stupid, being lied to about certification in the United States as an herbalist when there's no such thing, predatory courses. I started talking about all these issues, and at first, the other herbalists, the other women, thought that I was this really fun, shiny object that was, oh wow, she said something exciting, right? But then when I continued to have that stance and it started to impact people's capacity to fuck people over, let's just say I'm hands off. Like, I am ostracized, don't touch me, I'm crazy, I'm too much. I have, okay, so there's, you don't know this, some of you might, but um, there is groups online that are private for well-known herbalists, right? And so they don't realize that, like, I'm very quietly in some of them, or other people are in general, and show me things. And like the things that they say about me is crazy. Like that I have too much trauma, I have too much emotional baggage to be teaching people herbalism. I'm too broken to do this. I'm too much. I'm obviously unstable. I must be on drugs to be able to give out the fast paced information that I do. And it hurts, but like, ultimately, I know that a lot of it comes from insecurity. And this all really does boil back to the same mindset of the person who told me that I shouldn't go live every day because it's not fair to other herbalists who also have content that want to be seen. Right. And even everything, even all the mean comments and all the judgments about my neurodiversity and how I am as a person, the things that I believe, um, a lot of them still come down to like the scarcity mindset, right? Like, if I talk about how it's fucked up that people typically charge hundreds of dollars more an hour for an herbal consultation than you would pay to go see just a regular doctor with cash and without insurance, um, I'm not attacking that person individually, but they feel defensive about it because they do that, right? I'm not saying that they couldn't adjust their rates and make it more reasonable, and I'm not saying that courses can't exist and that they all fuck you over. I'm saying that it's so crazy because most of the time, these courses and consultations and things like that cost so much money that the people who genuinely need them, the people who can't afford insurance or to afford to pay for your course, that need herbal healing the most to have any sort of sovereignty with their health, can't access it. And then it just becomes this big circle jerk of really well-to-do people, usually white women, who are selling a course to somebody who's like, oh wow, yay, hey, I took this course. Now I'm going to sell you a course. And a course breeds a course, breeds a course, breeds a course. And it shuts out all these people behind this wall of courses. So I piss people off. But that's all due to scarcity mindset. It might seem like I'm just off on a tangent, but it's the same thing. Like, if you pay for knowledge, if you pay a shit ton of money to learn something, you have a hard time giving it away for free. You're like, I paid for it, you paid for it. I paid for it, you paid for it. I paid for it, you paid for it. And then suddenly, all this knowledge that everybody should have access to is just behind paywalls, right? And so when anybody challenges that, when anybody's giving anything free, like random tea time in the morning, when anybody does that, it's, well, what are you doing that for? You're not being fair to other people. And it's always funny. It's always funny how it comes down to fairness, right? Where I'm like, hey, you shouldn't, like, we shouldn't, like, overcharge people. We should find a way to make this more accessible, and we shouldn't be so afraid that if we give out knowledge that people won't support us, right? And they're like, that's not fair. I deserve to earn a living. And it always comes down to this fairness concept. But really, it's scarcity. Really, it's fear. I've had so many people be like, oh, you can't, like, if I've tried to, like, talk to anybody about business or anything like that, or like what I do, they're like, you can't teach people how to make tinctures freely and sell tinctures. Well, why the fuck not? Right? There are thousands of people that have supported me over the last decade. That's how long I've been running my Wildwood Apothecary shop, for a decade. There are thousands of people who I have taught to make tinctures, that make their own tinctures, that don't buy this particular tincture from me anymore, that still buy tinctures from me when I have something that they're not able to gather. Right? I show people how to make infused oils, balms, and salves. Most of the time, they still buy oils, balms, and salves from me. Or maybe they don't, but they buy my creams because they're not making creams yet. Or they buy tinctures, or they like my synergism capsules. Anything like that, you know? And so I feel like empowering people is more of a potent way to build real connections and a real community and a real situations where people really support you, because they are also, because they're not being held victim, or they're not being held captive. That's the word. Like they're not like when somebody makes a tincture. I've had this, people come up to me all the time asking this type of stuff. They're like, oh, I bought this tincture from this herbalist or from somewhere for myself or some family member, and it worked really, really, really well. But the person isn't making it anymore, right? And so I need to know how to make it and how it'll work for me, but I'm not sure how to formulate it because it has like fucking 15 different herbs in it. And, when they ask the person, they're like, no, sorry, I can't share that formula with you because of XYZ. It's really shitty. It's really shitty because that is you being dependent on them. It's why, like, all of my tinctures and even my synergism capsules, it's like 2 herbs. 50-50 split. Tinctures, 1 herb. If I ever stop making something like hawthorn tincture, catnip tincture, you don't have to guess how I made it. You can usually go watch a video of how I made it, but you can be like, the only ingredient is hawthorn. Right? There's no guesswork involved, but I saw that comment and it made me giggle. But it goes beyond that because, and I told you I was going to expand big on it. There's also the issue of where herbalists, particularly women, we really love to say support small business and stuff like that, but they fucking shame you. They shame you hard if you ever grow in any way. If you ever get help, if you're ever not using your body like some sort of fucking machine to the point where you grind yourself to death, you end up being attacked by the community, even if it's, remember, it's mainly women, so it's not usually an outright verbal attack. It's like underhanded shit, like they say some shit like, oh, well, I am making with, by hand, I press every flower, and that's, fine and all, but you don't have to. Like me getting help to make, let's say, my mouth mud. Right, I've been getting help for years to make my mouth mud because you guys go through it so fast I can't keep up, and my body is not a machine, right? It's literally no different. If I send in the ingredients, if I give the formula, it's blended, it's put into jars, there's no difference. They're like, well, there's no love in that. I'm like, I hope you're not putting some sort of weird love juice in the things you make. Right, it's the herbs themselves, right? But they like to make us feel like support small business. Unless that small business grows, then you're a piece of shit and a part of the problem. That's so weird to me. And for years, and I speak on this aspect of it because I did that for years. For years. For anybody who's been following me a long time, especially on Instagram, you know that I have been using my body like a machine for all these shop updates, right? Where I make thousands of things, of different types of things for a 1-day event. It's just me and my husband. I have machines that don't take the work off of my body like people assume they do. And it's, repetitive stuff that destroys your wrists and labeling and thinking and doing all these things, and it fucking literally killing me. Literally killing me. But people are like, oh, I can feel the love. And I'm like, what you feel is my burnout. Right. But no, I mean, in general, it's the concept that we as herbalists, as women, as creators, should always be giving endlessly of ourselves no matter what. And if we get any sort of help, we have somehow sold out, and it circles back around. I swear to God, it does. We have somehow sold out, and then because we've gone bigger, we're not leaving room for the little guy, right? And then that little guy becomes the noble, like, person that needs to slay us because we've become a giant, right? I'm like, the day that I'm successful enough to not worry about groceries, fine, come slay me. But right now it's fucking crazy. We had to go to the store yesterday to get like barely any food, just like staples, right? Like things that I don't have and that I have to go get. And then I'm like, $85. $85 for this little tiny bag full. Right. The day that I don't have to give a fuck about that, fine, I've made it. But right now I'm not that person. But um, that's just kind of like what a lot of herbalists who are practicing publicly face, and a lot of what herbalists who are practicing publicly practice towards other herbalists, right? Eventually, I want to write a book about the herbalism industry that'll probably put the nail in my coffin because it's not as kind and loving as they talk to you on videos. It's not as, oh, yes, we are one. Sister Bear, I love you. Thank you. We're so enlightened. Now, most of them behind the scene are fucking cutthroat. Most of them are really, they want to be on that pedestal. Right. They want to climb up there. They want to be envied. They want to be the person that's like healing you versus like, see, for me, like, I believe like I'm not a healer. I just like introduce you to like plants and they do the thing. Like, right. But a lot of people are like, I have given you this plant. I have healed you. Like, they take credit for the plant. And the same concept goes in their teachings, right? They're like above reproach. Like, you can't talk to them. You can't interact with them. Even if you pay for a course, you have to pay again. And we can all have boundaries. We can't somehow answer every single question that comes in, but I don't see a lot of reciprocal action going on in the herbalism industry like they would like to pretend. And also, by the way, here's a fun fact because I'm just on a fucking tangent. Um, so the herbalism industry makes literally billions with a B a year. They make millions and millions and millions to the point that they get to billions of dollars. A lot of the places that people assume are small little businesses are actually large corporations, right? A lot of them have been sold, purchased, bought off, what have you. A vast majority of the sales from the herbalism industry, like the people that are consuming the products, are women. Right. We buy like 85% of herbal supplements, of creams, of tinctures, of lotions. We're usually buying it for ourselves or on the behalf of a husband or a partner or whatever, because we are naturally, most women in general are naturally the ones who are doing the caretaking, right? Whether it's taking care of a wound or whatever, right? We're more inclined to purchase. But did you know that 90% of the herbalism industry is owned by men? There are not very many large herbal corporations or anything like that, or suppliers or anything, or anywhere you buy that are women. It's almost all men. And sometimes they'll be like, well, a woman owns that too. I'm like, yeah, and she's the front of it. And you'll go onto a website or a company that's owned by a man, and there will be pictures of women who are happy everywhere because they know their industry. They know who's buying it. They don't tell you that it's not some woman out in the field like picking herbs and making this thing from her intuition and that she loves. They have a team of people that work in R&D, which is research and development. Many of them are not herbalists in any way, shape, or form. A lot of them poach recipes from smaller herbalists, poach ideas and things like that. They formulate it, they make a label for it with their labeling department, and that's it. But that's problematic too, because what happens is the small makers such as myself, people that are running Etsy shops, most of those are women. But what they don't realize, because they're so busy blaming other herbalist shop who may or may not be doing like a little bit better for their lack of success, is if you try to enter the herbalism market on any real way as a woman, any real way, even I'm talking from experience, even attempting to buy equipment. I once had a man say to me, I was trying to buy an evaporator for my gray water, right? So I didn't have to go through like all the tasks of like a separate septic tank, and you can just put your gray water into this machine and it heats it up to the point where it evaporates it off into steam. and it doesn't go on the ground. It doesn't hurt anything. There's no toxic chemicals or anything like that. And he said to me, well, you do know that these things cost money, right, sweetheart? He said fucking sweetheart. And I'm like, yeah, man, I didn't assume you were going to give this to me for free. Right, but I come up against that again and again. When I message suppliers, like if I need to buy some sort of bulk ingredient, I message from a Wildwood Apothecary sourcing department and my name is Ken. Because if I have an email account that says my name is April, if I message from just myself, if I try to be anything but a man looking for materials, they don't respond back. And so it's really crazy. It's really crazy the stuff we face. It has taken me 5 years to find companies that will take me seriously and work with me, like within the United States, on outsourcing some help, like with my mouth mud or my synergism capsules. And the companies that I have found have been amazing, but it's taken me 5 years after talking with hundreds of companies, hundreds of production facilities that will take me on. And so it's really sad, and I bring all this up because when we are busy telling each other things like, as women in general, telling other herbalists and things like that, or even on the behalf of whatever, if we are saying, hey, don't do that, you're not making room for other people. What we're really doing is fighting against ourselves when we should be fighting against the situation that doesn't actually let us grow in any way. Right. We're so busy infighting that we can't see that we're like at the complete bottom of a ladder of an industry that we keep running. Right. Like we purchase all the things, but we're never allowed to climb the ladder to be the person that's in charge of those things that are being purchased. And so it's really crazy. And it's really insidious, and it's really deeply seated in Western herbalism, how much we fight and attack each other and then pretend on a screen that everything's perfect and that we're all fucking happy and enlightened, right? I've even seen ones that work together, like publicly. Like, I'm like, y'all hate each other, right? But like, they need the follows and the likes, and their goal is usually they really ultimately want to publish a book, be picked up and published a book, or get tapped by somewhere to make a course for one of the big course machines that sell thousands of courses to people in their corporations. And I'm over here just trying to have tea in the morning with the little people that like to follow me. Oh, so somebody said hi, Ken. So here's the funny thing. For a long time, because my husband, his name is Kent, Ken with a T, he does customer service, right? But for a long time, I made him call himself Jane because it's the flip side. If it's all women messaging me, they don't like to talk to somebody that's a man. But eventually I was like, you know what? Just be Kent. Just tell him that you're my husband. And that seems to take the edge off on customer service. If he just says his name is Kent, they're usually shut down or don't want to talk to him about anything, or they're like cold and abrupt. But if he says, hi, I'm Kent, April's husband, I take care of customer service, they're really excited to talk to him because he's my husband, he's involved with me. And I just noticed that. So sometimes he was Jane and I was Ken. But yeah, and this might seem like a random thing to ramble about after somebody was like, hey, don't post every day. But it really is all connected. And that person, I don't hold anything against them, because even if they're not practicing herbalism, they have been made to believe that way, whether consciously or subconsciously, that there's not enough room to go around. Like, I don't know, I would shit my pants publicly if I came on here and that little number up there on the screen said that there was like billions of people watching me, and somehow me being here for half an hour drinking tea took up all the room in the internet. Right now it's like 195 people. So that's what I was thinking about this morning as I was making my breakfast, which turned out pretty good. Breakfast wise, I guess the talk might have turned out all right too. So now I want to let myself ramp down. Somebody said, why can't you grow your own herbs? How do you expect to control production? Just give it to them. So you can grow your own herbs. You can, but like a lot of people also, if they've never done farming, like, so let's say that you want to make thousands of capsules, right? And you have to because every bottle takes like 60 or 90 pills. On average, if they have a minimum order quantity, which is called an MOQ, they will say, well, okay, but we'll do this product for you, but you have to make like 2,500 bottles. Suddenly, you need 300 pounds of each herb that you're working with. um, Now you can grow your own herbs, but I hope you're up to like growing a field's worth because you might have 300 pounds of wet weight, but when it dries down, right? So, but also, just to feed off of that comment, isn't it so funny that we're like support farmers, right? It's important to support farmers, but we're like, fuck them herb farmers. Why aren't you doing it yourself? Right? Like, I support a lot of herb farms in Oregon, California, a couple in Maine. You know, like we're working with like real farmers that are growing huge amounts of medicinal herbs. And that's a hard industry to be in because it's not like they're growing wheat or something that they can just take it and easily sell it. They rely on people like me that are working in larger amounts to buy their crops from them. But the same mindset kicks in where we're like support small businesses until they grow, support herb farmers unless or support farmers unless they're growing herbs. It's really weird. Um, so it's but yeah, it's very interesting. I'm very interested in the psychology behind that type of stuff. I mean, like I'm not studying psychology or anything, but like I always think about like what makes somebody's mind tick. Like what makes you shift from yay, support that person to boo, they're a monster because they've grown. Right. Like when does that flip and what has the narrative been that makes people believe that way? And so it's just but yeah, you know. Um, so I've really appreciated this morning talk, and I've done these talks before. This isn't anything that I've never said before. You can probably go back through other lives and hear me rant about things, um, but it's just an important thing to consider when we're going to tell somebody that they shouldn't be doing something, or that they are some sort of problem, or that they are hurting other people in some way. Now, I'm not saying that business practices can't hurt other people because you can look at corporations. Like you walk through a store and you think there's like hundreds of different brands in there, but really it's like owned by like 4 or 5 corporations that make different name stuff. They own these little brands, right? That's a problem. You know, that's got us to where we are now with food costs and food like lack of health and things like that. But it's really funny because sometimes I think that because we are so incapable as just general real humans of taking down massive corporations, and this is probably the psychological aspect that I consider about that we shift subconsciously into attacking small businesses. We make it their issue. Someone's like, oh, you use any sort of plastic in your production, you piece of shit. I once had a lady, I shit you not, there's another herbalist. I, for years, used recycled plastic mailers because that's what I could afford, but also they're recycled. It's like stopping stuff from being, and they're recyclable. It said right on it, recycle me, Um, and she went off on me and she was like, I go through the effort of packing everything in paper and paper shreds and blah, 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 because I actually care about the earth. Well, I'm like, well, okay, but first of all, you probably weren't taking in as many orders as me. It's really easy to like do all this handmade boutique stuff if you're not getting like 1,500 plus orders in a day, But also, how I choose to decide a recycled product really isn't none of your business. And she said, this was the funniest part. I'm just talking at this point, but and she said to me, well, one time I was selling a product that she called something like smoke signals, right? Which was like insensitive as fuck, right? It's cultural appropriation. It's like, and she's like, and somebody approached me and I changed my ways. And I'm like, me using recycled plastic isn't the same as you being ignorant. Right? Like, that is not the same thing. And it cracked me up. But those people are out there. And it's like, and I bring that up because the small amount of recycled plastic mailers that I used for a few years, literally in like 1 second, in 1 second of production, all of the mega corporations in the world used that amount of toxins or plastics. So it's like we attack like people that are just doing their best to get by in the little tiny world that they exist in, because we can't see or fathom attacking this massive beast of a corporation that is like destroying the world every like 1 second. Right. Like, and by the way, paper isn't more green friendly. Did you know recycled paper takes up like twice as much like water and electricity resources to make like that recycled paper product than recycled plastic does? Most of the time with recycled plastic, all they have to do is melt it down and recast it. But with recycled paper, they've got to strip it, repulp it, put it back together, form it, heat it. It takes a whole long different process. So greenwashing is definitely a thing you should look into, because that shit's hot and heavy. Um, mm, Speaking of greenwashing, and then I'm gonna get off of here because I've been rambling over 30 minutes. Uh, um, I had a lady that said she really, really loved everything I do, but she was absolutely disgusted by the fact that I still burned wood for heat. She was like, carbon footprint much? Yeesh. She's like, you should get solar, or wind. So let's talk about that for a split second, then I'll jump off. So first of all, I have a catalytic converter in my wood stove, which means that barely any smoke goes out of my chimney stack. I'm reburning the smoke particles that would have turned into creosote otherwise. And so, like last night at 9 o'clock, I put about 4 pieces of tamarack into my wood stove, and I dampened it down pretty low, and the coals burnt, and they're still burning. They're still burning. It's like 10 o'clock here. So I get like 10, 12 hours of heat off of 4 little pieces of wood. And by the way, you split a log and it turns into multiple pieces. So it was less than 1 log worth of wood. But also, did you know that when they're making solar, they're using shit tons of lithium mine? They're using slaves to do this, and it's killing people's water supply and the river and all that kind of stuff. And those big wind turbines you see that you think are so green and great for the environment, they fucking kill animals in the thousands. They destroy resources. Sometimes, if it's like been like not windy enough, they will actually, and I can say this because we used to live next to them, and they fucked up my health really bad, but they will burn thousands of gallons of diesel to keep those wind turbines running, because if they're not running, they're not creating power that they're shuttling most of the time to California. Right? And so it's really funny that like the carbon footprint of the phone we're watching on that's used with lithium and slavery of young children in China and things like that, it makes more of a carbon footprint than the 2 cords of wood I burn in a year. You know, and all this isn't even like a rant or like even necessarily about like feeling defensive or anything like that. It's just a symptom of disconnection. It is just a symptom of what happens when somebody thinks that because they flip on a light in their house that they're somehow not impacting anything in the environment. When they click on a heater, then the heat just comes, right? But because that person has never heated their home with wood, not likely. They've never gone into the forest. They've never said, oh, look, there's a deadfall. We're not cutting down living trees, right? Not most of the time. Some people scout out a tree and they'll drop it, right? And then they'll wait the year or so that they have to be able to come and get it because it has to be cured. Like it's honestly, people have been burning wood for heat for thousands of years. What we haven't been doing for thousands of years is relying on like nuclear power, coal power, damming rivers, all this kind of stuff to be able to flip a heater on in your house, right? And so it's big, but yeah, so I think that type of stuff is funny, uh, and so I like to heat with wood. It's reliable. We have a heater in the house, but like I don't ever use it. Why would I? Power is so expensive right now. And so like when we first moved in, We ended up getting about 10 cords of wood for an elderly family member as well. And then that all, she passed away basically. And so, but we have like, oh, I don't know. We're going through the last 2 cords of it over the past 4 years. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how you can make wood exceptionally efficient. And if you have like a small house, you could do like a rocket stove if you wanted to. That also, you can just use like deadfall, like from limbs and sticks and stuff. But like, I like my wood stove. I like that I can load it down and it'll burn for 10 plus hours. For 10 hours, I get heat. For 10 hours off of 4 little pieces of wood. That's crazy. That's exceptionally efficient. But anyhow, yeah, someone also said wood heat in a house helps prevent mold and mildew. It helps a lot because the air is dry and it keeps the humidity usually below 40%. 40% and above humidity in your house is just asking for mold to grow. Especially if your house is newer, because the newer houses are all airtight, kind of, compared to like older houses that are kind of air leaky and drafty. And then when that air becomes stagnant in your house and then there's high humidity and heat, boom, you just made like a petri dish for every type of black mold and mold that could possibly grow. So somebody said, would I ever consider doing a live with another YouTube channel? Someone who is excited to talk to you and ask you questions. I'll cover that and then I'll jump off of here. Sometimes I'll consider it. But one thing I've discovered over the years is that oftentimes when people ask me to do interviews or things like that, it's not reciprocal. Meaning, they are usually a smaller account, which is fine. I was small at one time too. But then they say, "Hey, I want to do an interview with you. But I also want you to post this on all of your social medias. I want you to," and so it ends up being like, oh, it doesn't really necessarily give back to me in a helpful way. And then because I have such limited time and energy, I end up kind of drained, and I just ended up helping them grow their audience instead. Right? I have that happen a lot, and I've put a lot of thought into it over the years because I used to say yes to a lot of things, and then like, the power of saying no is exceptionally liberating and healthy. And I have noticed over the years, which is why you haven't seen me do a lot of interviews with people or things like that. There's a few. I did one, the Witch of Wonderlust. I did one with her years ago. But the more I focus on myself and what I'm capable of doing, and like paying attention to like my own little realm of reality of ideas and goals and passions, the more that has room to grow. If I say yes to all the interview requests and things that I get that are not reciprocal, the less I grow and the more they grow. And it's not necessarily even about like it having to be reciprocal, but like if I end up doing more work for the interview, see, it's not reciprocal. And it's been really interesting to experience that over the years. And it might not have came across well. I might just sound salty. But it's more about just like looking at my limited energy and seeing if that will benefit me just as much as it benefits them, if that makes sense. Um, Whatever happened to no means no? Well, they learned that they could ask a bunch of times and 5 no's turns into a yes. Right? But I think that in this context, explaining while I say no, but so like if somebody was excited to me and they did reach out and it did seem like it was something reciprocal and it wasn't me doing all the legwork, so sometimes I think when no means no, it doesn't allow any nuances in this particular situation of saying no. But anyhow, um, somebody says we use wood heat and our power bill still managed to double this year. Yeah, imagine how bad it would be if you didn't use wood heat. Luckily we're on a cooperative. We're on a power cooperative. So our rates are a little bit lower because everybody who gets power from this company like is an owner, right? It helps. It does. And then once a year or so, we get like anywhere between $150 to a $300 check, which does not cover the cost of electricity for the year. But it's cool to get a kickback, you know. But if we were like 2 miles that way, we would be on good old Pacific Power, and then it would not be anything like that. So we just kind of lucked out. Although it was weird having to do like a credit check and like an application like you were, I don't know, it was weird to get onto the power out here, but I'm grateful that we did. I don't know what they would have done if my credit at the time, which it definitely is shit now, but I don't know. Do they tell people, like, if you don't pass, do they not allow you to become a member and you're just fucked for power? I don't know how that works. Okay, so I've been talking way over 30 minutes. Thanks for letting me ramble today. I am seeing your suggestions for topics for these live morning teas. Some of them, they're all great ideas. Some of them may or may not work. I will go through them and see how I can incorporate some of them, or I might just be like, thanks for the idea, and make independent videos. I don't know what the fuck my brain is going to do about it. So, thank you so much for hanging out. And if you want to support my capacity to have these random teas, to teach freely, to exist in general, and be the weird human that I am, consider calling something home from my apothecary by following the link in my bio or in the comment section if you're rewatching this. Hi, future person. Or you could become a member where you toss me a few bucks a month. There's nothing behind that. There's no secret paywall or anything you get access to. It's just a way to show your support to me. And then make sure that you like, comment, share, subscribe. All that kind of stuff helps as well. If you can't help the other ways, those are awesome too. So thank you so much for hanging out with me, folks, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye.